Okay guys, welcome back to the second part of the Let's Build a Table for Decentraland video. As opposed to the other videos, I have not prepared anything for this one. I'm just gonna rely on the natural flow of things in the hope that by not preparing the video at all, that I will be showing you stuff that actually happens when you are about to figure out what you want to do, how you want to do it. And let's see, I think maybe this could be a more natural way of creating a tutorial. As you guys know, I've started with that kind of video production, so I'm still experimenting. So here we kind of left off last time, where we built a very simple tabletop and pulled 4 legs from it. And we were actually ready to export it, to import it to Decentraland. But before we do that, actually we want to make sure that first of all we have some kind of visual qualities attached to the surfaces of this table. And here we have 2 options. Either we apply a color, so we create a material, apply a color to that material, and then use that material on that object that we have in front of us. And the other alternative is to create a material not with a color, but with a texture that we import from outside of Decentraland. And that texture is usually some kind of image, and that image we can put on top of that object as a skin that we can pull on top of that object on each of the surface of that object. So these are 2 different techniques. One of them requires an additional image, then that we pull over that object, and then we define how we pull it over that object. And the other option is to just apply a plain color. Now, the application of the color is the simpler way to go. And I think for a very simple object, such as a cube or this kind of table, where we will apply only one color, where each surface will have the same property, visual property, then we can just go with the color, because when we save the object for import to Decentraland, we will only have one material that comes along with the .glb file. And that means because it's only one material with one color associated with it, when we import that glb file, we will use only one resource of materials. As you may already know, there is a certain limitations for the number of materials that you can use on a parcel, and the larger the estate, the more materials you can use. But if you're actually using a one parcel, you have only a few materials that you can use, and you don't want to waste those. So that means if I would have now created a table and then applied a different color for the legs, a different color for the tabletop, and maybe even gone all in and just created a different color for each surface, I could potentially exhaust all of the material limitations for that parcel just with one table, and we don't want that. And in that situation, if we want to apply many different colors to an object, then we prefer to use a texture for a material rather than a simple color, because what the texture does, it has actually, it is an image that has all of the standard colors printed on that surface. So we just apply that surface to the object and then select different areas of that surface to define the color we want to use for a surface, which is kind of a very effective and a very interesting way of making sure that you use only one material instead of 2, 3, or 4. And in our scenario where we have a limitation on materials because we want to import that object into a gaming engine, we need to take advantage of that as much as possible. So for this video here, for the part 2, I'm just going to quickly show you how to apply one color, because this is all we need. But we will definitely have to look at the other option where we create a material with a UV map, meaning we have that multicolor image file that we use to save resources. But for the time being, it's just important that you understand that there are two techniques that we could use and that we are going to use one of those. So if we get back onto our working environment, you will see that area shading, and you will see that area UV editing. So these two are the workspaces which we use to pretty much generate materials, build custom materials, and then if we're using a UV map or that's multicolor surface that we import from the outside, here we can assign which surface of the table will then actually use which part of that image. But this is a little bit more advanced. So I just wanted to show you that there are these workspaces that are specifically designed for that, and they're very, very, very powerful for a lot of different things that you can do in Decentraland. But I will show those separately. I just wanted to make sure that there is no confusion about this, that we are aware of that option, but we are consciously not using it. What we want to do here is just apply one single color to our table. So let's just quickly change to layout. So we've finished building our tables here. We are back in the object mode. And now let's see if we can switch over to the material tab. And it's here at the bottom right. You have that little ball. And that little ball is the third workspace we use for materials. So we have UV editing, shading, and then we have that material tab here. So these are the three areas we need to be aware of. So let's have a look if we can just change the color of the table to something very dark like that. All right? And you can do this from this area as well, but we don't actually see it changing. If we switch over to shading, we can actually watch it change. So in this case, if you have just created the table, switch over to shading and just pick a color you want here. And now if we export this object as we always did through this function here, we will be able to import a colorful object into Decentraland as planned. So it's very, very simple. Now, I want to keep it actually at that level of simplicity because it kind of matches the pattern of simplicity that we tried to keep through the first couple of tutorial videos as well. But we will eventually look at some of the additional options that we have here, how we can play around with that particular material. Now, one thing that we may have skipped, which might kind of surprise you when you try to replicate this, is that when we were in that editing mode, it may be, I'm not sure about that, is that you had no material in that section here. Like if this space is blank, what you need to do is to add a material, select new here, and then you will have that material where you can actually select the color. And now we don't see it because we are not in the shading mode. So what's going on here is that we have two materials selected, but we have applied only the darker material to the table. So normally if I select the table now, I select the blue color, I should be able to assign it to that table, but I can't do this here. And now I will need to check why this is the case, how this actually is supposed to be different. Like if I could actually remove the material here and then it will become blue. But if we have two materials, and these are all scenarios that can actually happen for you as well. How do you deal with those? Can we just unset it? And can we select this one instead? There is supposed to be an assign button, but I do not necessarily remember how we were supposed to attach it. So these are the little things that still happen to me, where I know how to get around the problem here, but I do not know how to show it to you in the shortest way possible. So what I usually do to troubleshoot is just really quickly switch over to edit mode to see if this is the issue. And I think this is exactly the issue. As soon as we switch to edit mode, we have that assign button that is suddenly visible here. So now that we can actually choose which of the two materials that we have prepared here will be applied to these surfaces. Let's see if this is going to work. Boom, it did. And now we can actually switch back, select everything, assign. It did work. So these are some of the troubleshooting examples that you need to know, because it happens to me all the time since I'm relatively new to the software, that I'm still stuck in the object mode, although I should have switched over to edit mode to change something minor. What I would have done is just removing the material here, or as a solution, but it is not the ideal solution, right? But then as soon as you switch over, you start to learn how things work, and then eventually you start figuring stuff out. And the longer you do that, the more comfortable you become to troubleshoot for that stuff. So I'm actually thinking of maybe reshooting this video without that particular incident now, where I can portray myself as the absolute expert. But the truth is, this wouldn't be very helpful to you. I think it's important for you guys to, if you clicked on that tutorial and if you were curious how to create such a simple object and how to color it, that means you need this type of troubleshooting, this type of errors to learn as well, and because these things will happen to you too. All right, guys, I'm gonna stop at this point here. This is part 2 of how to create a table for Decentraland. I hope this was useful, and I see you sometime really soon in another video. Take care.